I want you to think back to the time when you first started self-improvement or when you first heard of it, right? And there was probably a gap between when you first heard of it and when you actually started implementing it. But either way, just think about the first time you ever like got whiff of like what self-improvement was and you thought about how it could potentially change your life, right? Now think back to that time. Like for me, it was like 7 years ago when I first heard about it. Obviously, I had like on and off periods when I implemented it. But just think back to the time when you first started and where you are at now, right? Like think about how much progress you've made since that time. Now, if you're anything like me, like you've made like decent progress. I've made pretty decent progress in my case. Even if I just think back to like 3 years ago when I actually like started self improvement again, like consistently, right? When I was like chubby and everything, I look at pictures. I look at pictures of me from like 6 months ago, and I'm like, damn, I've improved like quite a bit, right? Like I think like body wise, I've definitely like I'm very close. Like I'm very happy with my physique. Like I've completely transformed, and I'm very happy with my physique. Um, but I could improve it because of body dysmorphia and all that stuff. But like when it comes to that, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm doing like YouTube videos and stuff. Like it's not bad. Other aspects of my life, like I've made significant progress, right? But when I look back, I'm like, yeah, I could have done a lot more. I've done a lot. Like I've definitely like improved a lot, but I also could have done a lot more. Like I look at like my physique, like where I'm at now. Like it's decent. I still want to go for like obviously fitness is something you have to maintain, but in order to get to a place where I feel like I'll be perfectly happy with my body, I feel like I want to do like another year of like just a cut and like finish a cut and then do like a lean bulk. But all of this stuff I could have done in like 2 years if I was very consistent, right? I can look at like YouTube and stuff like what I'm doing now. Like this stuff I started YouTube properly, I think in like 2022. Yeah, and then I had like periods where I was just inconsistent last year and stuff, and it's like where I'm at now, like I could be like a lot further in terms of like making money. I've had like glimpses of like making money, but I haven't been consistent. And it's like, yeah, I could have like in the last couple of years I could have done so much more, right? So it's like this is where I started. I started at the bottom. I've like made like decent progress, but if I was consistent, like very consistent, I could have been like here. I don't even know if you guys can see my hand, the camera, but I could have been a lot further, right? Is what I'm trying to say. And it's something that like you have to look at yourself and be like, damn, like I think as guys we're trying to improve our lives and we're trying to get somewhere. Obviously, you just gotta have like the glass like half empty kind of like look on this, right? It's like, yeah, okay, I've achieved decent things, like cool, but like I should have achieved a lot more. I could be a lot further than I am now, and you should use that as fuel to motivate yourself, right? So I want you to think back to a time like the reason I did say think back to the time when you first heard of self improvement, it was obviously just to see like the time that has passed, and you just realize how much time you've wasted. Like I look back and I'm like 7 years. It's like 7 years I could have done a lot, but 7 years ago I was like 14. So, the one I look more at is like when I started again, like 3 years ago. I was 18. Yes, I was 18 when I started. I was 18 turning 19. Yes, 3 years ago, right? And it's like I could have done a lot more. But also, I want you to think back to a time when you just dreamt really big. Right? Because I remember when I first started self improvement, like it was cool and stuff. But then I remember, yeah, when I was it was probably around the same time. I was around like 14, 15. I was like, oh, I want to try and be like a professional footballer. Like I knew it was kind of like late because obviously you need to start from like really, really young. But for me, I was like, let me give it a shot. And I did improve my football skills like a lot. Like I did improve a lot. Like, dude, I was so trash when I first started, and I did like training. Like, bro, this was like until I eventually like stopped training, like consistently in terms of like football. When I started, no, it was a year into the second thing of my self improvement. So I think I was like 19 when I stopped, right? Because like yeah, something just had to give because I was studying at school, I was gymming, like trying to improve my life, and then I was also working on this on the side, and then I was like, it's this versus like football. It's like, yeah, football's not happening, so let me focus on this, right? But I want you to think back to that time. I think back to that time like younger Gideon, 15-year-old Gideon, who had all these woke up, was watching all these like football like training videos, and then I was training and I was dreaming about my life as like a footballer. Think back to a time when you dreamed absolutely massive, just a younger version of you who dreamed so big, right? And then look at where you're at now, right? And I know like for me, like I look back at like 15-year-old Gideon again. like I've improved a lot. Like I think if 15-year-old Gideon like saw me, it would be like a mixture. And this is literally what I've been saying, where it's like you've improved quite a bit, but you could have improved a lot more. So I think if 15-year-old Gideon was to see me now, like he'd be like, oh damn, like you look good, like you've done like decent things with your life, like you managed to get like all these like hundreds of thousands of followers on like Instagram and TikTok. It's like, oh nice, like oh you got like a good physique and everything. Like you'd be like, like that's pretty sick. Like oh that's quite inspiring. But then you'd also be like, but at 21 or 22, I wanted to be like playing football for like Manchester United or something. Now I know that was always gonna be like a stretch for like a dream, but again, like he'd be disappointed, right? He'd be very disappointed if you think back to a time when you dreamed big and where you're at now, right? Like there's a massive disappointment there, and I think that's where you need to just look back at yourself and just use that as motivation, because I think it's one thing to look back and be like, oh, he'd be disappointed, but then you look at it like, oh, there's circumstances and stuff that happened, but like the thing is that little kid still lives in you, and he still like manifests himself like now, right? Like right now you're still watching videos, you're still aiming to improve your life, right? And for me, I look back 7 years, right? It was like 7 years was like, oh, when I'm 21, I'm going to be playing for Man United and whatever. I'm going to be living this amazing life, right? And it's like, okay, I evolved from that dream. Like, no, that didn't happen. But it's not like I've stopped dreaming. Like now, I still think like, oh, 7 years from now, okay, I'm turning 22 in like 2 weeks. Let's say 7 years from now, right? Let's say 8. I'll be 30. Like, where do I picture myself at 30? If I was to lay out my dreams for what I picture myself at 30, like at 30, I picture myself like living somewhere, like probably like Texas or something. Like I'm living in like this massive like mansion, because I'm growing like a big family. Like I'm living with my family. We've got like there's like a street, like we live in a massive like gated estate, and we have like this dead end street, and there's like 6 houses. It's like me and my boys and our families, right? And we each have like these massive houses, and like we're financially free. I've got like this YouTube channel with like how many followers like a million subscribers or something, right? And I've got like a private community that I'm really like making like decent money from that. I've got like I'm in a good place, like a really good place, like go on like on holidays whenever we want with like the family. We do whatever we want, right? Like I picture myself like I'm in great shape. I've got the wife of my dreams, I've got like I'm in the middle of like building my family. Like I'm living my dream life. So like it's still a massive dream, right? So you need to like take yourself back and be like, okay, cool, I've disappointed 15-year-old Gideon, right? I've disappointed him, but now that's whatever, that's kind of how I feel bad and stuff. But then it's like, now I am the new 15-year-old Gideon, right? Like now I'm 21 turning 22-year-old Gideon, right? If I don't change my ways, 30-year-old me is going to disappoint 22-year-old me, right? And it's like you don't want to carry on that cycle, and you need like a switch. And funnily enough, like when I speak about that, it's going to take me to like the next part I wanted to speak about, right? Which is when I finally like got onto self-improvement again, like consistently. Because let me just I've given you like kind of a basic timeline, right? I discovered like got a whiff of like self-improvement. I was in grade 9, so that would be 2016. Yeah, I was 14, right? I kind of discovered self-improvement. I was watching like Tony Robbins, and what was his name? There was Les Brown and Eric Thomas. I remember I was listening to all like these motivational videos and stuff, and like I was going to the gym with my friend. Like I was motivated to like change my life. That was the first time ever I was motivated to like change my life. But like I was on and off and whatever. Like I had periods where I would go to the gym and then I just wasn't consistent, and that happened. So that was 2016 all the way to like 2020. Then COVID happened, and I'd have times where I was still training. I was still like trying to eat clean, but then I'd just eat like junk. I just got fat. Like basically, start of 2021, I was chubby. Like I wasn't like fat, like morbidly obese, but I was like your average person, like a puffy face, like acne everywhere. Like I just looked terrible. Like I showed you a picture. Yeah, just looked terrible. Like no muscle, nothing. Like it was bad, right? And I had planned, like I had planned to like change my life, especially like COVID. Like when we look back, COVID was a good time to like change your life. Like it was a pretty good time to just go monk mode. You think about it, and I didn't do that, right? But 2021 came, right, and I spoke to my friend, because we graduated matric. Matric is like grade 12. It's the final year of high school. We graduated high school 2019, right? And this is early 2021, and I spoke to this friend I hadn't spoken to since graduation day or whatever, right? I spoke to him, and I just I don't know. I think either I reached out to him or he reached out to me, but we just started speaking, right? And for me, like I got this thing in my heart. I was just like, damn, right? Because I looked back and I was like, bro, when I last spoke to you, like I just graduated high school. It's like, oh, I'm gonna start college. Like it's a fresh start. I'm gonna change my life and all of this. And I was like, I had all these plans, like of all these things I was gonna do. And what's happened? The last year has just gone to waste, right? And for me, in that case, it was particularly potent because it was like that was a high school thing. You leave high school and you're like, oh, I'm gonna come back to the high school reunion. I'm gonna show everyone I'm gonna be completely changed and whatever. I'm gonna change my life and stuff. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, at this rate, like if I carry on like this, it's cool like now that I've gotten the wake up call. It's only been a year. I mean, a year is a pretty like significant amount of time, but in the grand scheme of things, like you can change, you can recover from a bad year, right? So for me, I was like, okay, it's cool. I'm really grateful that I've gotten sort of this wake up call now because I don't want to get this feeling, right, of like, oh, the last time I spoke to you, like this friend I was speaking to, like the last time I spoke to you, I had all these plans of like how I was going to change my life, and like I haven't. Like I don't want that to be me at like 30, 35, coming back to like a high school reunion, and I'm like, and I'm looking at everyone and everything, and I'm like, damn, the last time I spoke to you people, I had all these plans to change my life, and it's like by then, your life. That's a lot more difficult to recover from 10, 15 years, especially 10, 15 years of your 20s, because that's where you have like you have the most scope to change your life, right? And by the time you get to like your 30s and stuff, they're just more difficult things to change. You can still change, of course, but no one wants that. I didn't want that. 15 years after, to be like, oh damn, I wasted the last 15 years. I had all these plans and I didn't. And that's when I got back onto self-improvement consistently. Like last year was a bit rough. This year's been a bit rough, but this year I've been changing like sort of what I'm focusing on. It is still self-improvement, but it's like I have a lot more like knowledge, let's say, like things like fitness. I'm not so focused on that as much. It's just as simple for me as like going to the gym 3 times a week, training really hard and making sure I'm eating clean. But I've not been eating clean. But again, I have bigger priorities now. Like my life has like switched in terms of what I'm aiming at. But either way, like ever since like 2021, like I've consistently been thinking about self-improvement. That's when I got into content creation and all of that. But I had a wake-up call like that, and it's like you don't want that to be you like 10, 15 years from now. And I think that's where people really like get a proper wake-up call, because it's fine to like look back and be like, oh, I feel really bad that I've wasted the last year. I feel really bad that I've wasted like this amount of time or whatever. But it's bad when you think, because you can kind of brush that off if you're like, oh, I've wasted the last year or whatever, but I still have plans to change my life. You still think of yourself like 5 years from now, oh, I'm still gonna be living this amazing life and stuff. But like it changes when you realize, if I carry on like this, right? If I was to take the last 5 years and then I was to project them, like I was just to flip them and project them over my next 5 years, then it's like, that is scary, because that's me. Like at 27, I don't want to be like, oh man, I haven't progressed that much, right? I don't want to be even in this position, like where I look back and I'm like, I've progressed like quite a bit, but not enough to like my life has completely changed. If I was to have that in the next, let me put it this way, if I was to have the last 5 years I've had in my next 5 years, right, like a similar level of progression, I'd be thoroughly disappointed, right? Because as I said, I want to be like completely financially free. I want to be like married with like kids, and I want to be like with my boys and like their families, and we're like doing stuff all the time. Like we're financially free, we're free in terms of time. Like we can go and like buy all this land and like start building our houses there if we want. Like we can do all of that. Like I want to be living that kind of life, right? And it's like if I get to like 27 and it's like, oh, I've really improved. Like my physique is like, like a 9 out of 10 now. Like right now as it stands, I think I'm very happy with my physique. I think right now if I was to put, I'd say like compared to like the average person, it's like it's obviously like elite. But in terms of like for us guys, we're like on self-improvement, we have like body dysmorphia and stuff. I'd say like with where my physique is like right now, I'd say it's probably like 8, right? But if I was to get like 5 years from now, and it's like it's like a 9, it's like a 9.5, even a 10 out of 10. Honestly, like with physique, I've gotten to a point now, as I said, my priorities have kind of like shifted in terms of like the things that are actually going to change my life. My physique, honestly, if it's a 10 out of 10, like 5 years from now, it's not going to change my life that much. Like right now, it's really decent enough, right? But let's say if I get 5 years from now, I've got a 10 out of 10 physique, right? Let's say, oh, I've progressed in my career. Like I'm doing like decently in my career, making like decent money, but I've not made life-changing money. I'm not like going on like 5, 6 holidays with my family and stuff, and God forbid I'm like not married with kids and stuff, like it's something I really want, and God forbid I also have not like found like my boys, right? That would also kill me. Like if I haven't found that, if I'm still like living a similar kind of life, I've progressed, but like I've progressed on like a steady rate, I'd be very, very disappointed. Like I want like exponential growth, right? Which is what we all want. And I think it's important to flip that and really be like, okay, you can look back and say I haven't achieved, but it's important to project that and be like, if I carry on the way I'm going now, my next 5 years is gonna look like this, and that is scary. I don't know about you, but that's scary for me. Um, but yeah, I mean, I spoke in the last video and I've spoken plenty of times about self-image, but the way you truly like change your life is through self-image. And you know, the book I would say you should read is Psycho-Cybernetics. You should do visualizations. Visualizations change your subconscious brain. They change the way you see yourself, right? You're basically manipulating the fact that your brain can't tell the difference between lived experiences and imagined experiences. So if you do vivid visualizations, it will change your self-image. And when you change your self-image, then you start doing like the things. You start being like steady, and you start making like proper like progression. And you keep doing that for a long time, you'll get that exponential progress you're looking for. But you go to my last video, I spoke about it in depth about like self-image. Make sure you guys let me know what you think of the topic in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe to join the Self-Improvement Brotherhood. Until next time, see you boys.